Hey you guys, it's Peter, and I'm back! Of course I'm back, I'm not going anywhere. Peace! Peekaboo, I see you because I'm YouTube famous now. Available in 2021, the album, Dad. Yeah! Hey little thing, let me light your candle, cause I'm mama who back home again in Indiana. Everything feels so different in this chair. It does really feel like I'm back home again. And while I was gone, I missed my cousin's birthday, my good Judy Caroline. I love her so much. She's like a sister to me. I did talk to her while I was out there and wished her happy birthday and all that kind of stuff, but she was my best person in our wedding, so we were talking about that and everything like that. But anyway, I wanted to give a little shout out to my cousin Caroline and wish her a very happy birthday and sing a special song for her that every year I have ever been there for her birthday, which is almost all of them, we have sang. And that song is not my cousin's favorite song, no, but a very appropriate song. And it goes like this. Some of you might know it from karaoke in a bar. Sweet Caroline, bum, bum, bum. Sometimes never feel so, I don't know the words, so good, so good, so good. Everybody knows that part though, right? Peace. Anyway, Caroline, I love you. Happy birthday. And I hope that you had the most amazing birthday in the entire world. Feel free to wish my cousin Caroline, who has actually been on this channel with me, a very happy birthday in the comment section below. Yes, it's my cousin that we share a grandmother that went to prison. She's an OG. Not once, but twice. She went to prison for embezzlement. And I recently, if you watch my vlog, you know this, I recently found the newspaper article that talked about it, and it even had her address and my mother's address in high school. It had the address. Back in the day, I guess they put your home address and everything on there. Woo! But anyway. All right, so I am back home again in Indiana. When your lips are dry as mine, then it's Luna Beauty time. Yes, I did watch Manny MUA and Laura Lee's new podcast that they have out. I really liked it. I thought it was really good. I mean, I love Laura and Manny together anyway. And so the first one was about Dramageddon, but they didn't really go in and talk about Dramageddon. They just talked about like cancel culture, and they did reference like their own, you know, like supposed cancellations and things like that. I thought it was interesting. I really liked them together. So it will be a podcast that I will continue to listen to. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. But congratulations to Manny and Laura on the beginning of your podcast. And if you didn't know, yours truly is getting ready to start a podcast with my good Judy Melissa. And it is a horror movie podcast. And I have to tell you, last night on the second part of our trip home, we flew from Las Vegas to Minneapolis. Minneapolis is a really beautiful airport. It's like very new and modern inside. And then from Minneapolis, we flew back home to Indianapolis. And the first half, I watched a movie called 4 Days with Glenn Close and Mila Kunis. If you guys have not watched it, and you know I talk a lot about addiction and recovery because I've been sober for 26 and a half years, well, 26 years and 9 months at this point. The movie is a really important movie about addiction. I talked a lot about it on my vlog last night, so I won't repeat that conversation over here. Mila Kunis, she plays a heroin addict. Like, she reminded me so much of so many friends of mine that have passed away. Like, it was really, there were parts of it that were really hard to watch. I was like on the plane, like bawling my eyes out. And Glenn Close is just fantastic as well as family, as a mother that has been affected by, you know, her daughter's addiction. And it's just, there's a really, really powerful scene at the end. And I'm like on the plane watching this, and it's with the stepfather. And he's talking about like, you know, you got to stop blaming, you know, everything that you've done on the cause and the conditions of why you are why she is the way that she is, you know. And it's a really powerful scene, and I was like, it goes in and it talks about, he was like, she's like wanting to fight with him. You know, have you ever known somebody that's just like so angry all the time that they just want to fight? They just want to fight. They don't care who they want to fight. They just want to fight. And so he looks at her and he says, you're mad at her, so you want to fight with me? He goes, okay, we can have a fight. Let's have a fight. You want to make me your punching bag? And it just was like this really powerful scene. So anyway, if you are interested in addiction and recovery stories, I would highly, highly recommend 4 Days. And I would be really surprised if both of them are not at least nominated for an Academy Award. Mila Kunis, she's not somebody that, like, I mean, she's not, I don't love her, I don't hate her, she just is like, you know, I've seen her in a couple movies, but she was so good in this movie. She was really fantastic. So then the second half of the trip home, I watched the first part, well, I watched the first half of part 1 of Fear Street. I'm like hearing a lot of people say they don't like it or they don't think it's scary. I thought it was really good. It really reminded me of like the Scream franchise. And like I Know What You Did Last Summer, those Lois Duncan books that were made into movies. I thought it was really, really good. So get ready, because Melissa and I, we're getting ready to talk about some horror movies, okay? And I'm not some whores in this house. Like, there's some whores in this house. She's not a Christian! Ouija board! No, but we're going to talk about some horror movies, and we're going to interview some cast members from older movies and newer movies, hopefully. And we've got games and all kinds of stuff, trivia, and we're going to just discuss our feelings about certain movies. We're going to, for every podcast, we're going to, I was like, do I not have my notes? We're going to, like, pick a certain, like, movie or two, and we're going to discuss those movies. So I'm really excited about that. All right. Let's get into today's drama. Today's drama is about the fact that Alex James has come out with his second part of his video. I think there's going to be a third part. He said at one point, like, in the next part of them, but he didn't say, like, at the end, like, there will be a third part. But he does have Waterbug merch out now, new Waterbug merch. Anyway, so this was the highly anticipated second part of Alex James' video series based on the things that Gabbie Hanna has said in her series. Do you guys wonder, like, when is Gabbie dropping the next part of this series? I mean, it's been out for a while, and the last episode, which is about Jessie Smiles, and she hasn't dropped the new one yet, but she's gone on all these podcasts and talked about, Gabbie doesn't like drama. He even refers to another podcast in here that she's gone on and talked about these things. Gabbie on the Keemstar interview said she doesn't know why she's always in drama. Girl, stop going on podcasts and talking about the drama that you're in if you don't want to be part of drama. I don't know what to tell you. You know what I mean? So anyway, I found this video really interesting. I will say there's a lot, and I didn't write down every single thing. You guys go watch it. There's a timeline that he does. I'm just going to reference the timeline. He goes in and he shows screenshots and stuff like that, and that was interesting because he kind of talked about that at the beginning of it. So the movie on NBC tonight is Showgirls. Know me, don't you know me? I used to love that movie Showgirls so much back in the day. And before we were going to Las Vegas, I was trying to find movies that took place in Las Vegas so I could download them and watch them. And you guys, I can't find Showgirls anywhere. It's nowhere. No, maybe it's on YouTube, I don't know, but probably an edited version of it. But you can't stream it anywhere, you can't buy it anywhere. I was like, I can't believe you can't. I mean, people are like, do you care that much? I mean, no, but I do love Gina Gershon. Oh, how could you not love Gina Gershon so much? Okay, so, the video, Alex James' new video, is called The Proof, I think it was posted yesterday, The Proof Y'all Wanted, Gabbie Hanna's Lies Detangled Part 2, 121,000 views it's currently sitting at. I just watched it. It has 10,000 likes and 260 dislikes, so the video is getting a lot of likes on it. And at the beginning of it, he starts going in and talking about, like, the receipts that he's going to pull and all this kind of stuff. And he said, I clearly don't remember everything from 8 to 10 years ago. I don't do, like, it's hard to recap Alex James because he's so funny to watch that when you're doing it, like, to see how, like, highly frustrated he is with this whole situation, but he turns it into kind of, like, humor at the same time, you know, is, like, so it's hard to, like, I can tell you what he said, but you should go watch the video. I'm just going to tell you my response to some of these things. He said, I clearly don't remember everything from 8 to 10 years ago. Having to go back to look is so weird and so violating, he says, to show emails and messages with a date to prove what Gabbie already knows. And I think that that's a really interesting point, you know? It's like Gabbie goes into a video. This is her pattern at this point, okay? Gabbie goes into a video, and she throws up all this stuff. Now, if you've watched enough of Gabbie Hanna's series at this point, what you'll know is that much of Gabbie Hanna's receipts and documents and emails and like, she'll throw something up that really has no reference to what she's talking about at that point. You literally have to pause each video and read these extremely long text messages. And within that text message or direct message or whatever might be one line that kind of references what she's talking about. So it's interesting because to her perspective, apparently she's taking that one line and she's applying it to this overall meaning of things that doesn't really make it that way anyway. But for her, it's fact, right? So then what it forces the person to do, if they're going to defend themselves, is to say, well, that's not how it is anyway. And you know, like I've said this before, and I'll say it again. When you are friends with somebody, and like Alex James talks about this in here, and I highly agree with the statement. I'll talk about it in a second about friends, past friends. But like if you are somebody that keeps receipts on somebody, like you are not their friend, right? And you know, like when I find out that people keep receipts on me, like immediately that's just where I kind of am like, okay, I'm done. Like I don't understand why you would be friendly with somebody and keep receipts on somebody for 8 to 10, 12 years. I mean, at this point now we're talking about, you know, like it has been 10 years. So, you know, and then they have to go back in and defend themselves and find text messages from 8 and 10 years ago. I mean, I don't even know that I would have that stuff. You know what I mean? So that to me is really, really interesting that he says that, and I agree with that. But that's what you have to do if you live in the world of Gabbie Hanna, to defend yourself to that, right? Then he goes in and he shows this clip where Gabbie says she had a choice to either, it's from a podcast, and he said this is from the earlier part of 2021, and he says in there she says that she had, so he shows this clip of the podcast, which is just like a voiceover, but it's on a video on YouTube. Shows clip where Gabbie says she had a choice to either drag everybody down with her. They're asking her about like lies on the internet. She said at that point there were so many lies that were being said. Oh, they asked her about why she left the internet. I think it was actually, no. It wasn't the podcast. This is the part where she asks the therapist on the video, and she does the video with the therapist. And the therapist says to her, why did you leave social media for a while? And she says, on the clip that so he shows the clip where Gabbie says that she had a choice to either drag everyone down with her or leave the internet. So she chose to leave the internet because there were so many lies. But then he said, but 3 months later, that's exactly what you did. You made this series where you were like dragging everybody down with you. So was that a lie that you said, you know, before that? Then he goes on to say that she continues to talk about this 3-hour phone conversation. And he's like, did you not think that people were going to listen to the 3-hour phone conversation? And I think that's a really good point, right? Like, interesting phone conversation if you listen to it in its entirety. And then he says, you know, then she says that she wants an apology from Jesse. Then she says she doesn't want an apology. Then says she wants an apology because this should never have been brought to the internet. And he like gets real frustrated. He's like, you're the one that brought it to the internet. Like, you know, like it was you, Gabbie. You're the one that brought it to the internet. And this is again where it's like the chicken or the egg kind of thing. And when you go back and you like break it all down, it makes a little bit more sense, I think. So it's interesting to see it from, you know, a point of view of somebody that was right in there. Oh, no, he says it got brought to the internet because Gabbie brought it to the internet because she would not stop, is what he says. Then he goes in and talks about the fact that she couldn't convince the masses of like how all these people had done her wrong. So then she started like going into the DMs of fans and trying to convince them individually. And he's like, that's really weird, you know? And I thought about that. I thought, that is kind of interesting, you know? Like when I heard about like Gabbie talking to fans individually and stuff, like that was kind of around the same time. Well, it was a little bit later, but around the same time that Gabbie had reached out to me. And so I guess maybe I didn't think much about it. I thought, is this just what Gabbie does? She just reaches out to people in their DMs and whatever. And she's just, for me, I have to be honest with you, people that live their lives on Twitter specifically, it's very interesting to me. Like, I really don't understand it. You know, that people that are just kind of like consumed with it. And Gabbie seems to be one of those people that is like, whether she says it or not, maybe she's not tweeting out every 5 minutes, but she's very active in like the DMs and liking. It's just, you can tell she is. She knows what's going on, you know? There's a lot of people that, I think Trisha Paytas is exactly the same way. I think Trisha Paytas knows exactly what's going on Twitter at any given moment, you know? Okay, and then he goes on to talk about this timeline. And the timeline is basically about when Alex James met Curtis Lepore and how that all broke down and basically debunking the lies that Gabbie said. Okay, and for me to get on here and explain everything that he said, I don't know that I could do a good job explaining it the way that he did. Plus, he had all these receipts and he was showing parts of her video and then debunking it and all whatever. But he goes on and he shows this timeline. But first he talks about Gabbie Hanna and her stands. And he says, you don't have to like, I love this quote, okay? Because this is really, truly how I believe in my heart. And I talk about this on my Peterisms channel all the time. And I talk about this in my vlog all the time. And I really, truly believe this. He's talking about Gabbie Hanna and her stands. And he says, you don't have to like somebody. You don't have to have somebody in your life anymore to still wish them happiness and wish them the best in all their endeavors. And I was like, amen. Like, I really, truly believe that, you know? Just because you're not friends with somebody anymore, like, wish them the best. That's called maturity, you know? To say, you know what, we're no longer friends. This person's no longer in my life. I wish you the best. I wish you happiness. I hope that everything in your life is successful, you know? Or don't say anything at all, I guess, you know? And so he's talking about that, and it's like, he was like, I don't understand what they don't understand about that, you know? Which, again, goes back to, that's exactly how this could have all gone, you know, way back in the day. If Gabbie Hanna keeps on bringing up stuff from, like, years ago. Like, not just, like, a year ago, but, like, years and years ago, you know? So, then he says, he goes in and he talks about Gabbie being upset that Jesse accepted his apology and not Gabbie's. And he said, it's up to Jesse to accept whoever's apology she wants to accept. It's not up to him, and it's not up to Gabbie, right? And then he goes on to explain why it happened. He talks about this tour that Gabbie referenced. He said the tour never happened, and Curtis was supposed to be on the tour. Then he talks about the first time that he met Curtis, and this had been after the incident that had happened, but before TMZ, the article broke, and he talked about how he already knew about it because he was friendly with Jesse, or he was friends with Jesse, and he said in there that Curtis kept on trying to push the conversation of wanting to have the conversation with him. And he was like, listen, I don't want to hear about it. Like, I don't want to be in the middle of this. I don't want to talk to you about it. He also said in there, he made this very, very clear that every single time that he has had an interaction with Curtis, or anytime he's talked to Curtis, that he has talked to Jesse and told Jesse about that, you know? So then he goes on and he talked about talking to Jesse before he stayed with Curtis and talking to Curtis. So this was like a big thing that Gabbie brought up about how many days he stayed with Curtis and all this kind of stuff. And he goes in there and explains staying in an Airbnb, trying to get into it early because he wanted to get out of staying with Curtis and all this kind of stuff, basically saying that he didn't have enough money to stay somewhere else, that he talked to Jesse about it, and Jesse knew that he was going to be staying with Curtis. He talks about the difference between online people and friends, and he goes in there, and this was interesting to me as well, you know, that I think this misconception that people that interact with each other are friends online, and this took me a long time to understand as well, you know, and that it's not that way. It's that they're just like online people that you know, that you interact with online, right? And so he's talking about like meeting somebody at something and that they weren't really friends yet. I think it was this Miami thing that Gabbie referenced, where he was like, I didn't, you know, like really, they were just online people. They were not friends of mine. And he goes on and talks about that. And he said Jesse knows every time that he has hung out with Curtis, and he talks about how he didn't want to be involved in any of this, and he told Curtis that. And then there was a point that Curtis told him exactly what happened, and that he was like very upset about it, and had like references him saying something, or he said something like it looked like he had like a 10-pound weight. And at that point, like that was when he was like completely done with it. And he talks about how this was all before the sentencing and the court situation between Jesse and Curtis. And then he goes on and he talks about how in June 2014 is when he met Gabbie. And he talks about this party that they were at this like mansion, and they were making fun of this really gaudy mansion. And he says that he got Curtis kicked out of the party, that he went to the person that was having the party, and he said, you know, this is who Curtis is. Do you guys know the background history of Curtis? And he got Curtis kicked out of the party. And he said that then when he met Gabbie, like he pulled her over to the pool, I think is where he said, or like somewhere private. And he like told her everything about Curtis. And she said, because she wanted to talk to him, because she wanted to tell him that she felt bad for everything that he was going through. He makes a point to say, this was after the sentencing, okay? This wasn't speculative. This wasn't a TMZ article. This was after the sentencing had occurred, okay? So it wasn't like, was it up in the air? Did it happen? Did it not happen? Gabbie knew at that point that it happened, and she still wanted to go over to Curtis and talk to him about how she felt bad for what he was going through, is what he said. And so, Gabbie, everything about the situation, he told her everything about the situation, and Gabbie's response to him was that that was not what she had heard. He had already been sentenced, and she still wanted to say she felt bad for him and what he was going through. Then in 2016, Curtis reached out to Alex to apologize for all these bad things, for calling him the F word, and for spitting at him, and all these things that had happened. And that he said at that time he didn't realize that he was being manipulated by Curtis, and that Curtis wanted him to be in this video, and that he was like, wanted a gay character for this video or whatever. and that Alex reached out to Jesse. Jesse was like, do it if you want, and something like that. And so he did this video clip and sent it to Curtis. He said he regretted that he had sent it to Curtis, and he wished he hadn't, and he said he wished he had never done that. Then he shows the podcast. So before was the therapy session thing that Gabbie put the video up. Shows a podcast where Gabbie says he threatened, this has just come out since the last Alex James video, where Gabbie in her previous video said that she put something up on the screen basically insinuating that Alex James had allegedly hit her, okay? And Alex James in his last video said, you do realize that I could sue you for defamation of character, okay? So now she's in this podcast and she says that he threatened to hit her. And so he's like, okay, you changed your story because you heard my video and now you think that maybe because of a lawsuit? He was like, okay, I get it. So she's changed her story. Basically, he says that's a lie. And then he goes in and says that there's two lies. The lie is how she met Jesse, and then the lie is about apologizing to Jesse. And he goes in and he explains where she met Jesse, and it was like in this hotel room, and she asked to come to somebody's hotel room, and then she went over to Jesse and apologized, and all this kind of stuff. It's very confusing, and I'm sure it's even confusing for him, because this is stuff that happened like 8 or 10 years ago. And then she also says in the podcast that her listening to Curtis doesn't make her an apologist. And his response to that is that he had already been convicted at this point. So, like, what's your point? And then she goes on to talk about that it's the definition that Jesse, this is all from the podcast, the definition that Jesse read to her on the 3-hour phone call was from Urban Dictionary. And so anyway, so that was part 2 of the Alex James thing. And he's like going in there and showing why nobody wants to be friends with Gabbie Hanna. And I don't know, it's the whole situation is just very sad. And, you know, it's like Gabbie, like, I don't know. It's like, Gabbie, do you see, like, what's going on here? Anyway, I don't know. As somebody that used to be your friend is saying this, you know, like, I don't know. And maybe there's no truth to it. You pick what side you want to be on, you know. Let me know what you think about all of it in the comment section below. Woo! But Alex is pretty heated up for none of it to be true, you know. Anyway, but the whole situation just makes me so sad. Anyway, all these people affected by this. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. I love you guys, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.